Can you talk to me about? I know I've done like a vitamin C cleanse.
Yes.
What that does and.
Yeah, so that's we call that a vitamin C cleanse. And again, the doctor who wrote this Alkaline Way is Russell Jaffe, brilliant doctor, board certified in several different disciplines, trained at the NIH. So he's got credentials, and he went out really to debunk holistic health when he was younger. He started traveling around to find out, he heard about acupuncture and he heard about meditation, and he thought it was all, garbage because that's what he was trained in. He was so medically trained. He came back, studying with, Buddhists and meditation. He came back doing a residency in acupuncture in Asia, and he came back. So he's one of my mentors. And he really does this, but he developed something called the C cleanse, which we use a special type of powdered vitamin C called L-ascorbate, which is the type of vitamin C that you get from foods. We have to be careful with supplements because as it becomes such a big industry, manufacturers are using ingredients that are synthetic, and they're not what our body really needs. So again, you have to use certain ingredients. But this L-ascorbate powder is buffered and has minerals in it, and you can use it in a way to drag out things, to get you to detoxify and to find out what your antioxidant load is. So one thing I did with you was I have people take a teaspoon of, you wake up in the morning and you don't eat, and you take a teaspoon of this L-ascorbate powder in a little bit of water, 2-3 ounces, and you would drink that every 15 minutes. After an hour, 2 hours, depending on how toxic you are, you would be going to the bathroom, you'd have loose stools, and then one of those would be mostly water or liquid, and that's called a C flush or C cleanse. That's when you stop. And however many teaspoons it took you to flush is your antioxidant load. That's what your body's calling for. And then daily, you would take a percentage of that, 40, 50, 60% of that total amount through the day to know you're getting the proper amount of antioxidant, which vitamin C is the master antioxidant. Inside the cell, it helps produce something called glutathione, which is the master detoxifier. So we need these things for, again, to keep alkaline and to enhance our oxidative stress. But that's something, again, that could be done for, very inexpensively, but can improve people's health. So that's something they should be guided through that from, someone who knows what they're doing. So I help people guide through that. So.
Right. You mentioned the gut before. Tell me, how important the gut is and what it controls and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So we find now that there are about the estimates of 40 trillion microbes that are housed in our gut. We call it the microbiome, and these are mostly bacteria, but there's some yeast, some fungus, some viruses, some other things. And when we're healthy, this environment is diverse. There's different strains of bacteria, and they all live together, and they help with all our digestion. They communicate with other parts of our body, so we have a gut-brain axis. So these bacteria and these microbes communicate with our brain that has its own microbiome and helps with brain function. We have a gut-heart connection, so we have input into those areas all over the place. But most of it's housed in the gut. So to make that the most diverse and have the most beneficial bacteria in there creates health. We find when that's off, due to, again, medications that destroy it, especially antibiotics that mess up this diversity of the gut microbiome. Other medications, stress, again, lack of sleep, all that we spoke about can alter that, and especially your diet. So when we get all that together, the gut is very healthy. What a leaky gut is we got to remember that our gut lining, the cells of our gut, again going back to biology in high school, is only one cell thick. So we have the opening where food and everything is passing through. We have one cell thick of lining, and then we have our blood and immune system underneath it. These cells are held tightly together, like grout in your bathroom tile, with proteins called zonulin and some other proteins. When those are disrupted through, again, a variety of things we mentioned, the cells become separated, and nutrients and bacteria and food remnants, instead of going through the cell, they go through the space between the cells. And then that's when our immune system gets alerted to, there's a problem here because we don't know what this is, because it's not processed by the cell. So the whole idea of lifestyle changes and getting your diet right and finding out what you're sensitive to is to remove those things so that these tight junctions between the cells can heal and then repopulate with the proper gut bacteria, and then we're on our way to restoring, our health. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but that's the simple version. Right. So we have to remove those things. So people come in and say, well, I'm on a probiotic, I'm doing this, I'm taking these nutrients. But what they haven't done is removed the things that are causing the problem first. So we have to remove those in order to get the probiotic to work and in order to get the nutrients to be absorbed properly. So again, if you have a leak in your bathroom tub and it's full of water, you can try and patch the leak with the water in the tub. It's not going to be that effective. So you have to remove the water, patch the tub, and then you could fill it back up, and hopefully it'll hold.
Right.
Same kind of thing. So.
Okay, good. If a person, I guess they feel they're healthy, but they just want to, I mean, how often should they get checked? I'm guessing once a year.
Yeah.
And what kind of things would they do if they came here? What would you do to?
Yeah, I would try and get them to do, again, a basic food and environmental sensitivity test.
Okay.
The basic one, we test about 200 or so different items in our world if you're healthy. But it will give us an indication of if we're exposed to something that could be harming us. Some other blood markers that we know define health, such as, again, hemoglobin A1C, vitamin D levels, which very important, C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker. There's about 6, 7, or 8 of them that really define health, that tell us in 10 years, if these levels are right, we have a good chance of living healthy for the next 10 years, and that's documented. So those, I think everybody should get, if they're healthy, once a year. And that's in doing, their urine pH once in a while, making sure that's in line. Those are things for healthy people. When I do have people with some type of illness, we have to go a little bit more in depth, but those things we should be doing, and that can keep us, preventing us from a lot of things. And chronic illness is killing our economy. This, Alzheimer's, which, again, Alzheimer's researchers, Dale Bredesen and David Perlmutter, these are neurologists and Alzheimer's research in the functional world that are describing these now as preventable, chronic illnesses, where, most neurologists would say, well, you're going to get it, your parents had it, your grandmother had it, but, that's probably not the case. Heart disease, diabetes, just because, again, your family suffered from that, you can change that with your lifestyle, no matter what your genetic code is. Genes can be turned on or off, and we do that through good health.
I know vitamins and supplements are something really big these days, and like you mentioned, there's a lot of companies out there, with, a lot of bad stuff,
Yeah,
not giving you, what you're paying for. But what would you recommend? I mean, obviously the best thing would be for them to come in and see what they're deficient in.
Yeah.
But just overall, if they wanted to, like, just should they just take like a multivitamin
Yeah.
or omegas or whatever? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's some basic support. So if you can get a good whole kind of, whole food type multivitamin and mineral, I think, again, we can eat as well as we can, but our nutrients are depleted from our foods these days, no matter how good we eat. So that would be something. Yeah, knowing our omega-3 status, which would be, a good fish oil supplement. Again, that's not contaminated, that doesn't have mercury in it, that's not oxidized. And probably not every day, but intermittently a good multi-strain probiotic. Those three, and then, depending on if you're deficient after testing, some other things, but those three probably would do it if you're eating really well, exercising, getting your sleep, and de-stressing with meditation or prayer, things like that. That probably would be the basics. But again, where the vitamin or the mineral is coming from is extremely important. And you look on labels if you go to the supermarket or some of the health stores, and next to the vitamin it'll have where the source is. So for instance, B12, that's one thing. The B vitamins are made very synthetic these days because it's cheap. But if you see B12 and you see next to it something called cyanocobalamin, that's a synthetic form of the B12. It doesn't really do what it's supposed to do in our body. There's no food that you can eat that has cyanocobalamin. Mm-hmm. So the more active ones, the ones that are in food are called adenocobalamin or methylcobalamin. Those are the ones that are in food. So that's what you've got to look for in a good multivitamin or B complex vitamin. And again, you probably need guidance on those because there's a lot, the vitamin E's, and there's a lot of synthetic sources, and they don't come from food, and therefore, they don't act the way they should in the body, and sometimes they make things worse. So, but those would be probably the basics.
Where you get, you supply your vitamins?
Well, I mean, we use brands. Most of, again, the functional docs have brands that are only sold through, doctors or healthcare professionals because they're tested, they're analyzed, they're made with purity. I like a few brands. One of my major brands is called Perque, P-E-R-Q-U-E. Again, made from whole food substances. There's no fillers. The capsules are made from food sources, so you're not getting synthetic capsules, which are a problem, believe it or not. Designs for Health, there's Orthomolecular, there's a few brands, but those are the ones I mostly reach for. We can get good supplementation. The key is to know what you're trying to do. You can go to the health food store, the vitamin shop, or whatever, and you could spend a lot of money on things that you don't need or aren't right for you, and you think you're doing the right thing, or you read something online about it, or you saw Dr. Oz and he said, someone on there said take this, but you probably need some coaching and some guidance and stuff that so you don't waste your money or maybe do some harm.
Let's talk about eating. I know we talked a lot about how important nutrition is to our bodies. I know probably the best way I would think to eat is like how they used to eat 100 years ago, mm-hmm. which is very hard nowadays.
Right.
But what are some of the basic things that that I guess most of us should know? But
Well, yeah, there's a lot of diets out there.
Right.
We hear a lot about paleo diets and ketogenic diets. That's the big one now, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's FODMAP diets. I mean, you can name a bunch of them. One of the things that really clears it up is when you do get tested, you can really find out what you're sensitive to. So it eliminates the guessing in doing this. But any of them, and the ones that have been shown to have health benefits, like Mediterranean styles, paleo diets, even ketogenic diets, are mostly just whole foods, mostly plant-based. So most of your plate should be, some type of vegetable medley, colorful vegetables. some type of lean protein, whether it's from fish or grass-fed beef, which I'm not opposed to, or a good source of chicken. You know, I'm a believer in that. I'm not a vegan. So some type of lean protein, but small amounts. And then good healthy fats that add to the meal. So that's your good quality extra virgin olive oils, avocado, coconut, good quality coconut oils, nuts and seeds, again, that you're not sensitive to. Those things provide the good omega-3s and other, you know, good fatty acids to our diet. So whether you call it ketogenic or Mediterranean or paleo, you really want a good whole food plant-based diet. So most of your nutrition should come from fruits and vegetables, and then with, again, you know, some lean proteins and some good fats. And that's really the basis of all of them. Some of the ratios, you can argue, you know, some of the ratios of the macros, right?
Right.
In the fitness world, everybody has a different ratio of the macros, but you know, for general health, you know, unless you're trying to really compete at something or doing something, you know, if you have most of your plate with good, healthy, colorful vegetables and good fats and lean proteins, you know, you're gonna do pretty well.
You mentioned the macros, and that's something that I struggle with because you have the bodybuilding world,
right?
And you know and also a lot of diets, basically everything is sugar free, fat free, you know, all that kind of stuff, because you're trying to keep calories down, and I understand that as far as if you're doing a show,
right?
You know, you could do that temporarily, but I feel like for a healthy lifestyle, you should stay away from. Do you agree? You know.
Yeah, you know, you wanted something that you can sustain. So, like you said, yeah, I mean, you know, an athlete, a bodybuilder, or someone in the fitness world that is doing something temporarily for, you know, a reason, you know, they could get away with that. But if you're talking about general health, you need something sustainable, something you can do every day. But even that should change. There's a lot of information about intermittent fasting now, which, you know, you're aware of, and I know you've spoken about it. Fasting mimicking diets. There's some great research out of UCLA. This Vitor Longo, who's a researcher out there, is doing intermittent fasting and fasting mimicking diets with cancer patients, pre and post chemotherapy, and they're getting tremendous results with that. David Perlmutter and Dale Bredesen, the neurologist, are using ketogenic diets for Alzheimer's and neurological issues, and they've been getting great results. But those even have to be cycled, though. You can't even do those all the time. So you have to go back to, again, basic nutrition, and then, you know, some of these more drastic type measures. But the one that's tested over and over again is the Mediterranean diet, that, you know, has been shown to be good for diabetes, you know, with reducing diabetes and heart disease, and that's basically because it's got good healthy fats and mostly, you know, fresh fruits and vegetables, low in, you know, some fish, and low in proteins, but has some good lean proteins. It does have grains. I mean, the Mediterranean diet has some grains in it, which, you know, nobody's anti-grain. You know, maybe wheat, maybe gluten, especially in this country with, as you mentioned before, glyphosate spraying. But you know, those are the ones that have been consistently tested and proven to be, you know, health-minded. So that's what you could do most of the time,
right,
and stick to.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to?
No, I think we covered everything. You know, I know you've been you know, involved in your training. So how do you think that nutrition, you know, affects people who want to physically train and develop, you know, muscle and things like that? If you obviously know it's that when you change your nutrition, you know, changes your strength and your lean muscle, right?
Nutrition to me is number one of everything. I mean, that is more important than working out. I mean, obviously working out is important. Obviously your sleep is important, but nutrition is what you're doing you know, I would say 70% of your day. So you're eating, in my case, I'm eating 6-7 meals a day. So if it was garbage, I would feel like garbage.
Right.
So I try to eat as healthy as possible. And, you know, you as they always say, you're gonna get out of it what you put into it. So if I eat, you know, a cheeseburger before I go work out, I'm gonna feel horrible.
Sure.
You know, so and it's not that I don't eat that kind of stuff, because I do, you know, in moderation.
Right.
But in most cases, you know, your nutrition, it has to be on point. Yeah, it
sure.
has to be. You know, health wise, I'm always. I mean, I want to live. You know, I have no control over this. You know, if I could live to 100, that would be great.
Sure.
But I want to live to 100
Healthy.
Healthy.
Right.
I don't want to live
Active.
to 100 and
Right.
be in a home.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that's the key.
That's the key. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to. I mean, one of my friends always says you want to add years to your life and life to your years. You know, so yeah, you want to do that. But yeah, so you know, I always tell people too, just remember, anything that you put in your mouth, anything you're going to eat or drink, is either going to help you with your health or it's going to hurt you. Nothing's really neutral. So you have a choice. You know, so whatever you know, if you make those good choices 80-90% of the time,
Right.
you know, you'll be healthy. If you're making the bad choices 80-90% of the time, you know, even if you're healthy now, it's gonna catch up with you.
Definitely.
So
There's so much against you in this world too. Like
Yeah.
the way, especially the U.S. And I just did this in a past video. I showed how GMOs are allowed in the U.S. and in Europe they're not, and just showing Heinz ketchup, the difference of ingredients that are allowed over there and not here. They you know, they consider a lot of the GMOs, you know, illegal or, you know, poisonous.
Right.
And we allow this here.
They don't have the lobbies, you know, and lobbyists and, you know, the money factors. But yeah, I mean, that's why whenever you can, you know, try and buy organic. I know it's a few cents more, thankfully, as more people, you know, buy it and more farmers convert, you know, the prices will go down, you know. I mean, Amazon buying Whole Foods, you know, will lower some prices, and there's other areas. Or grow your own. I mean, I know we have a garden at home, you know, at least in the times of the year that we can.
Right.
And we make sure the soil's, you know, organic. And you know, people think that's just a ploy, but it's not. I mean, you know, it's what's on your foods, and you know, what you're taking into your body, you know, could either help you or hurt you, and might as well help you. I don't. Have you mentioned on your podcast the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen? Do your people know what that is?
I have not mentioned it yet. I'm trying to remember if I put it on my Instagram posts. I know I've, but that
yeah. So people can look that up.
Yes.
I mean, you could Google it. But what that is the environmental working group every year test produce. They get a bunch of organic produce and a bunch of you know, regular non-organic produce, and they test the pesticide residues on them. So they put out 12 items they call the Dirty Dozen,
right,
where there's a big difference. Like strawberries come to my mind.
yes,
I don't remember them all.
grapes, yeah,
Grapes, where there's a big difference between organic and non-organic with pesticides. And then they have something called the Clean 15. I think again avocado I think's on there,
yes,
where it didn't make too much of a difference. So if you want to save a few pennies, you know, take the Clean 15 list with you to the supermarket, and you can get those, you know, either one. But the Dirty Dozen, make sure you get in your organic section, because, you know, you're just eating a bunch of toxic chemicals.
definitely good.
So that's a good source, but you
Yes.
know, for those who, you know, can pick and choose, or you can't find sometimes organic, locally grown usually is better. A lot of locally grown farmers are organic. It's just they don't have the money or the resources to get them certified organic. So, you know, you could always ask, you know, if you go to local farmers markets or local farms, you know, if they're using GMO seeds, etc. And if they're not, you know, you're probably pretty safe with that.
Right. And you mentioned the price on, you know, organics being a little more expensive, but the way I look at it is, if you may pay less for this item, but you're gonna pay for it more down the road when you're going to the doctor or whatever, because you're sick, because you're getting an autoimmune disease, because you're eating all this bad stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, you know, obviously I know people can't always afford everything, but like you mentioned, there are the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 that can help with that. Yeah. So that's one way to get around it.
Good. I think you've covered a lot of stuff today, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Dr. C.
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah.